I couldn't help but remember that Ethan had a severe allergy to seafood, so bad that even the faintest fishy smell would make him physically sick. Everyone in our social circle knew about it. He'd even flipped a table once just because the food at home had too much salt. But that night, I smelled a faint scent of the sea on the coat he wore home late. When the entryway light turned on, the hands of the clock on the wall pointed precisely to midnight. Ethan was home. He took off his coat and casually draped it over his arm. The motion stirred a light breeze, bringing with it a barely noticeable fishy smell. It was faint, but strong enough to make me sit upright on the sofa. "Why are you back so late tonight?" I walked over, intending to take his coat, but he turned slightly to avoid me and tossed it onto the sofa. He was loosening his tie as he walked farther into the apartment. "There was a last-minute dinner. Couldn't get out of it," he said, his voice filled with impatience toward me. I followed behind him, and that smell drifted by me again. "It's on you." I paused, then asked anyway, "Isn't that a fishy smell?" Ethan froze mid-motion while untying his tie. He turned to face me, his brows tightly furrowed. "You're imagining things," he said sharply. "It's a new cologne. What would you know?" He rarely used that kind of annoyed tone with me, but before I could say anything else, he cut me off. "Emily, can you stop overthinking everything all the time? I've worked all day. I come home to relax, not to be interrogated like some suspect." With that, he didn't even look at me again as he walked straight into the bathroom. The door slammed shut with a bang, and the sound of rushing water echoed out, cutting off all conversation. I stood there, staring at the expensive, custom-tailored suit lying on the sofa, an icy chill creeping through me. The Ethan I knew wouldn't go near seafood, not even touch coins that had the faintest fishy residue. His allergy was no joke. Back in college, there was once a club dinner. A plate of garlic vermicelli scallops had just been served, and the moment it was placed on the table, Ethan, who was sitting upwind, immediately started sneezing. Within minutes, red rashes bloomed all over his face, and his breathing turned rapid. We were all terrified. Everyone scrambled in a panic to rush him to the hospital. It wasn't until late that night that he was finally out of danger. Since then, no one dared to even mention the word seafood around him. After we got married, I made sure to keep that incident in mind. Nothing remotely related to seafood ever appeared on our dining table. My mom once came to visit from our small coastal hometown. She always thought I was suffering in silence here, thought I was being mistreated. She didn't believe in Ethan's allergy, assuming that as long as seafood was cleaned thoroughly, it wouldn't be a problem. That day, she kept it from me and spent the whole afternoon in the kitchen while I was busy elsewhere, making a huge spread of her specialty, seafood. She said she had spent a lot of money to buy the freshest prawns and grouper, steamed them using the most traditional method to preserve the original flavor and nutrients. When Ethan came home from work and opened the door, his expression changed instantly. He stood at the entrance, not even taking off his shoes, and looked at the table full of dishes with a look of pure disgust. "Who told you to make this?" he asked coldly. My mom, still smiling, stepped up to greet him. "Ethan, you're back. Come, try Mom's cooking. I guarantee you'll love it." Suddenly, Ethan shouted, his voice so loud that it made my mom flinch. He stormed into the kitchen, grabbed the plate of steamed grouper, and threw it straight into the trash. The sound of the plate shattering was sharp and harsh. "I told you I can't even smell this stuff," he shouted, eyes red with fury. He pointed at my mom. "Do you not understand human language? Are you trying to kill me?" My mom turned pale with fear. I stood there frozen, unable to say a single word. I rushed over and grabbed Ethan's arm, tears welling up in my eyes. "Why are you yelling at her? She didn't know. She was just trying to be nice." "Nice?" Ethan let out a cold laugh. "I don't need that kind of kindness." That night, my mom didn't eat anything. She locked herself in the guest room, and by early the next morning, she had already bought a ticket to return home. Later on, I think Ethan must have realized he'd gone too far. He brought me a small piece of cake from the bakery, awkwardly placed it in front of me. "Explain things to your mom for me," he said quietly. I just couldn't control myself. I looked at the tiny mousse cake and felt a storm of emotions in my chest. I knew he didn't mean to be like that. He genuinely couldn't control his reaction. But the same Ethan who used to lose control just from smelling seafood somehow came home wearing that very smell on him. The next morning, as if nothing had happened, Ethan sat at the dining table sipping his porridge. I placed the fried egg onto his plate and casually brought it up. "I took your coat from yesterday to the dry cleaners." He let out a neutral, without even looking up. The cleaners were really careful. They said they smelled something unusual on it and didn't want it mixing with other garments, so they specifically asked me. Ethan's spoon slowed midair. "What kind of smell?" he asked. Still not looking at me. "Seafood," I said plainly. He set the spoon down. The light clink of metal against porcelain echoed in the quiet kitchen. Finally, he looked up at me, his expression blank. "Is this really such a big deal? Worth bringing up over and over?" I looked at him and suddenly felt like everything was meaningless. "Not important," I said, pulling the corners of my mouth into a forced smile. "Let's eat." He didn't say another word. Silently, he finished his porridge, picked up his briefcase, and left the house. The next few days, the house was eerily quiet. On the surface, everything looked normal. He came home on time, I cooked meals as usual, but we barely spoke. He'd rather watch financial news than say a single word to me. I stopped asking. I knew I wouldn't get anything out of him. That weekend, I used shopping as an excuse and took his phone from the study. I had always known his password. It was my birthday. I tried it. The screen lit up. Strangely, I felt a small sense of relief, but also a deep sadness. I opened WeChat. His chat list was clean, mostly work groups and a few familiar friends. I scrolled for a long time but found nothing suspicious. I was just about to give up when I opened his payment records. One transaction caught my eye. A restaurant named Shiyu, charged at 9:30 p.m. on Wednesday night. The exact night he came home smelling like the sea. I'd never heard of that name before, so I looked it up on a review app. The page loaded with beautiful pictures. It turned out to be a French restaurant by the coast in the Lin family's seaside district, renowned for its top-tier seafood cuisine. The average cost per person was outrageously high. The promotional photos showed floor-to-ceiling windows with an unobstructed view of the vast ocean and sandy beach outside. My fingers turned cold as I gripped the phone. He hadn't gone to a business dinner, he had gone to the seaside, to a restaurant he should have avoided more than anywhere else. I didn't say anything. I quietly committed the name of that restaurant to memory. And just like that, life seemed to fall back into its usual rhythm. Ethan? Ethan stopped coming home late. Occasionally, he'd even take the initiative to say a few words to me, ask me what I'd done that day. But the more he acted like that, the more uneasy I felt inside. On Friday afternoon, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. "Is this Miss Emily?" a young woman's voice asked cheerfully. "Who's speaking?" I replied. "I'm Su Xiao, the new intern in Ethan's department. He asked me to let you know there's a team dinner tonight, and he'll be coming home late." I paused for a second. Why didn't he tell me himself? "He's in a meeting right now," she said sweetly. "He left his phone with me and didn't want you to worry, so he asked me to call you." Su Xiao's voice sounded polite and thoughtful. "Miss Emily, please don't be upset with Ethan. He's just been so busy lately." "I understand," I said. "Thank you." After hanging up, I sat by the window, lost in thought. I knew Ethan's company well. I used to work there in finance during the first 2 years of our marriage. Interns were never allowed direct contact with the department heads, let alone be entrusted with their personal phones. At 10 p.m., Ethan came home, reeking of alcohol. I helped him onto the sofa and brought him a glass of warm water. "What did you have at the dinner tonight?" I asked casually while helping him loosen his tie. "Just some random stuff," he mumbled. The new intern seemed very thoughtful. She even called to let me know. I said. His body stiffened for a second. "Did she?" he muttered with his eyes closed, as if already half asleep. "Smart girl." I didn't respond. I silently took off his shoes and covered him with a blanket. After he fell asleep, I picked up his phone. This time, the passcode had been changed. It was no longer my birthday. I tried our wedding anniversary, his birthday. Neither worked. Then, on impulse, I entered a set of numbers, 0826. The screen lit up. That was Xu Xiao's birthday. I had seen it once in the company directory by accident. His pinned chat on WeChat was someone marked only as S. I tapped it open. There weren't many messages, but enough to chill me to the bone. Ethan, do I look pretty in this dress today? You look beautiful. I swapped your tea for Westlake Dragonwell. That jasmine tea in your office is so cheap. Good. This team dinner is so boring. I want to go to the beach and feel the breeze. I'll take you after it's over. The most recent message was from half an hour ago. Did you get home? I did. She's asleep. But he was lying right beside me, wide awake, yet telling someone else that I was asleep. The jasmine tea I had carefully prepared for him for 5 years, he now saw as cheap. He wasn't really tied up with business dinners, he was just at dinners that didn't include me. He wasn't avoiding the beach because of his allergy, he just wasn't going there with me. Disappointment accumulates like being boiled alive in warm water. At first, the temperature just feels off, something you can still endure. You even convince yourself it's just your imagination. But by the time the water starts to boil, and you finally want to jump out, you've lost all your strength. I started losing sleep. I would stare at the ceiling all night, my thoughts a chaotic mess. Ethan's changes became even more obvious. He began traveling for work more frequently, sometimes disappearing for 3 or 4 days at a time. He'd show me flight tickets and hotel bookings, everything looked airtight. But I knew exactly where he really went. Su Xiaoxiao never bothered to block anyone from her social media posts. Maybe she wanted me to see them. She'd post scenic photos tagged in the same cities where Ethan was supposedly on business trips, always with those cryptic, double-meaning captions. Being spoiled like this, I'm turning into a useless little thing. One photo showed a hand, wearing Ethan's Patek Philippe watch, peeling shrimp for her. I threw my phone aside and covered my face, but no tears came. I remembered once when I had acute gastroenteritis. I was throwing up and had diarrhea so bad I could barely stand. I called him, my voice trembling, begging him to come home early and take me to the hospital. On the phone, Ethan sounded annoyed. I'm in an important meeting. I can't leave. Just take a cab yourself. Don't make a big deal out of everything. Later, I found out that there hadn't been any meeting at all that day. One of his friends had posted a photo from a music festival on their social media. In the corner of the crowd were Ethan and Su Xiaoxiao. He had her hoisted up on his shoulders, and the two of them were laughing like a couple of carefree kids. So I guess my health, my pain, none of it mattered. His happiness was the only thing that did. After that, I stopped talking to him. I stopped asking when he'd be home or whether he was okay. I grew silent, and he seemed perfectly content with the peace and quiet. Sometimes he'd glance at me and frown. What's with you lately? Always walking around with a long face. Who are you trying to guilt trip? I looked at him and wanted to ask, what kind of expression would you like from me? Should I smile and wish you too well? But the words died in my throat. What was the point of asking anymore? They say there's no grief greater than a heart that has already gone cold. I think that's exactly what I had become. On my birthday, I purposely took half a day off. I went to the supermarket and bought all kinds of ingredients. I thought maybe, just maybe, this could be our last chance. I wanted to try one more time. I made his favorite sweet and sour ribs. I even simmered a pot of chicken soup. I didn't buy a cake. Instead, I baked one myself from scratch. I spent the whole afternoon in the kitchen. By the time night fell, the table was full, but all the food had gone cold. Ethan still hadn't come home. When I called, his phone was off. I sat alone at the dining table, waiting from daylight until dark. In the end, I quietly ate the cold bowl of longevity noodles by myself. The next morning, I woke up on the couch. When I turned on my phone, the first thing I saw was a new post from Su Xiaoxiao in the middle of the night. It was a photo taken at the Shiyu restaurant. She was holding a massive rose-covered birthday cake, smiling sweetly. Ethan stood behind her, his face slightly obscured, but I immediately recognized the shirt he was wearing. It was the one I had personally ironed for him. The caption read, "Thank you for celebrating my birthday like it was a holiday." So he hadn't forgotten my birthday. He just chose to spend it celebrating someone else's. At that moment, whatever thread of hope I had left completely vanished. Calmly, I got up and dumped all the untouched food into the trash. Even the cake I had spent all afternoon baking went into the bin. Then I picked up the phone and called a lawyer. "Hello, I'd like to ask about divorce and how assets are divided." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Because I finally understood, tears mean nothing to someone who doesn't love you. Then my dad suddenly fell ill. He had an acute heart attack and needed emergency bypass surgery. The operation would cost 300,000 yuan. We were just an ordinary working-class family. There was no way we could come up with that kind of money all at once. My mom was sobbing so hard on the phone she could barely breathe. I hung up and immediately called Ethan. It was the first time in months that I'd initiated contact with him. The phone rang for a long time before he finally picked up. Hello? His voice sounded distant, with waves crashing in the background. My dad's in the hospital, I said. He needs emergency heart surgery. We need 300,000 yuan right away. I'm in a meeting right now, he interrupted flatly. Can we talk later? Ethan, this is life or death. I nearly screamed. There was a pause on the other end. Then he spoke, irritation creeping into his voice. Got it. The company's been tight on cash lately. I'll see what I can do. Then he hung up. I stood in the hospital hallway, holding my phone, feeling like all the strength had been drained from my body. I'll see what I can do. So familiar, so practiced. I waited on a cold plastic bench the entire afternoon. No calls, no messages. That evening, a friend sent me a screenshot from a car dealership's social media. In the photo, a brand new red Porsche sports car sat gleaming under showroom lights. Su Xiaoxiao was beaming with joy beside it. And standing next to her, unmistakably, was Ethan. The caption from the dealership read, "Congratulations to Miss Su on your new car." The caption read, "Big thanks to Mr. Ethan for his generosity. What a fairy tale romance, so envious." The car cost 700,000 yuan, enough to pay for my dad's surgery twice over. So his financial troubles only existed when it came to me. My father's life didn't even measure up to a smile from the woman he loved. I stared at that photo for a very, very long time. Then I laughed. I took out my phone and transferred 50,000 yuan to my mom. That was all the savings I had. Mom, I'll figure out the rest. Don't panic. Next, I messaged the lawyer. I've gathered enough evidence. Let's file the lawsuit tomorrow. This time, I wouldn't look back. When I dropped the divorce papers, along with a thick pile of photos, transaction records, and chat screenshots in front of Ethan, he was reviewing documents. He looked up, confused for a moment. Then the familiar, mocking smile crept onto his face. "Emily, what is this? Another one of your little stunts?" he sneered, brushing the papers aside without even looking at them. "All this, for something so trivial?" Trivial? I stared at him, realizing just how much of a stranger he'd become. "Ethan, in your eyes, what exactly counts as serious? Would it only matter if I were dead?" He was momentarily stunned, his brows furrowing tightly. "Can you not be so dramatic all the time?" Dramatic? I pointed at the photo of the red sports car. "My dad's lying in a hospital bed waiting for money to save his life, and you're out buying a woman a 1,000,000 yuan car. And I'm the one being dramatic?" My voice grew louder, nearly hysterical. All the grievances, the anger, the despair I had bottled up during these past few months exploded at once. Ethan's expression finally changed. He picked up the photos, his face turning a little uncertain. "This isn't." He seemed like he wanted to explain. "I don't want to hear it." I cut him off. My voice had gone calm, dead calm. "The agreement is simple. A 70-30 split of all our assets. You're the one at fault. If you won't agree, we'll go to court. These are more than enough to destroy your reputation." He stared at me for a long, long time, speechless. I don't think he ever imagined that someone as soft-spoken as me could say something like that. In the end, he picked up the pen and quickly signed his name on the divorce papers. "Emily," he said coldly as he tossed the document back at me, "you'll regret this." Taking the papers, I didn't even look at him. I turned and walked away. "My only regret," I said without stopping, "was marrying you in the first place." During the 1-month cooling-off period, I moved out and rented a small apartment near my office. Ethan never reached out to me. He probably thought I was playing hard to get again, waiting for him to come and coax me, thinking I'd come crawling back, just like after every other argument we'd had in the past. Unfortunately for him, this time he was wrong. Without him, it was like the skies had finally cleared. I started to find myself again. I began working out, learning floral arrangement, going to art exhibits with friends on the weekends. One by one, I picked up the hobbies I had abandoned for him. My insomnia vanished without treatment. I looked better every day. My coworkers at the office all said I seemed like a completely different person, radiant, vibrant. My dad's surgery was a success. I borrowed money from friends to cover the follow-up costs and sold the jewelry my mom had given me as part of my dowry. In the end, I was able to gather enough. Ethan's mother, my ex-mother-in-law, was the only one who called me a few times. She had no idea we were getting divorced. On the phone, she continued speaking to me as if nothing had changed, giving me instructions as though it were her right. Emily, has Ethan been going on a lot of business trips lately? You need to keep an eye on things. Men start acting up when they have money. Oh, and that cashmere sweater of his, make sure you hand wash it. Don't toss it in the machine, or it'll be ruined. I sat there quietly, listening to her ramble on and on. It all felt incredibly ironic. Auntie, I interrupted, Ethan and I are getting a divorce. From now on, someone else can worry about his laundry. There was silence on the other end of the line for a few seconds. Then came her shrill voice, sharp and angry. What did you say? Divorce? Emily, have you lost your mind? Is there someone else in your life? You shameless woman. I hung up immediately and blocked her number. A month later, Ethan and I met in front of the Civil Affairs office. He had lost weight, he looked haggard and exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes. When he saw me, his gaze was complicated, filled with emotions I couldn't quite read. But one thing was clear, the unmistakable regret on his face. You're really going through with this? He asked hoarsely. You're the one who pushed me to this point, I replied. While we waited for our number to be called, we sat side by side in silence. After a long moment, he suddenly spoke. Your dad, how is he doing? It took me a second to realize who he meant. He's fine, recovering well, I said, my voice calm and distant. He said nothing more. After a while, like it took every ounce of courage he had, he turned to me and said softly, Emily, can we not get divorced, please? I know I was wrong. It's been over with Su Xiao for a while now. I won't stay out late anymore, I promise. I stared straight ahead at the glowing number on the display screen. Ethan, I said quietly, when my dad was lying in a hospital bed and you were buying someone else a car, everything was already too late. His hands, hanging by his sides, slowly clenched into fists. When it was our turn, the clerk walked us through the final steps. Are both parties consenting to this divorce? She asked. Yes, I answered firmly. Ethan closed his eyes. After a long pause, he forced the word out, yes. When I held the red divorce certificate in my hand, it felt strangely hot, almost burning. As we stepped outside the civil office, the sun was bright and warm. Ethan stood at the bottom of the steps, not leaving. He looked at me like he was searching for a trace of reluctance, some sign that I didn't want this, but he found nothing. I gave him a smile. It was the first time I had smiled at him in months. Ethan, I wish you happiness. Then I turned around and walked away without looking back. I had finally let him go, back into the vast sea of people. Life after the divorce turned out to be far better than I ever imagined. I used the money from the settlement to buy a small apartment in my parents' neighborhood. We became neighbors. I even opened a little cafe, decorated just the way I liked. The business wasn't booming, but it wasn't dead either, enough to support a simple life. Every morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee, greeted customers, listened to their stories. In the evenings, I'd close up and go have dinner with my mom. The days were simple, but they brought a kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. It had been so long since I genuinely felt this light. News about Ethan came in bits and pieces, mostly through mutual friends. I heard he had really broken it off with Su Xiao. She hadn't taken it well and had shown up at his company several times to cause a scene. It got so bad that security had to escort her out. I also heard his company hit trouble. Several major projects suffered losses, the cash flow dried up, and he was running around trying to raise money, humbling himself in front of investors and begging anyone who might help. But everywhere he went, doors slammed in his face. All those so-called brothers and best friends who used to toast him and slap him on the back, they now avoided him like the plague. Once I caught a glimpse of him at a business event. He looked much older. His hair had started to gray, and his back had a slight hunch. He was no longer the confident, spirited Ethan I once knew. He weaved through the crowd with a wine glass in hand, wearing a smile that was all flattery and desperation. No one was paying attention to him. Then he saw me. His steps faltered. He seemed like he wanted to walk toward me, but stopped. Across the noisy, bustling crowd, our eyes met from a distance. In the end, he raised his glass to me and forced out a smile, one uglier than a cry, then turned and disappeared into the crowd. At that moment, I felt absolutely nothing. The cafe began to pick up business little by little. One rainy afternoon, the door chime jingled. I looked up, and to my surprise, it was Ethan. He wasn't holding an umbrella, and he was soaked from head to toe. Rainwater dripped from his messy hair, and he looked completely miserable. He stood at the entrance without stepping inside, just staring at me. There were only a few customers in the shop, and all of them turned curiously toward him. I put down the cloth in my hand and walked over. "Do you need something?" I asked, my voice calm. I had once loved him, but I wasn't the type to dwell on the past. Even if that love had once been real, it was over now. "Emily," he finally spoke, his voice hoarse and raw. "If you're here for coffee, you're welcome to come in. If not, please leave. Don't disturb my business." His lips moved slightly. His face was full of pain and regret. "I just wanted to see you," he said softly. "I heard you're doing well." "I am. I'm doing great. Without you, I'm doing better than ever." The words hit him like a knife. His body swayed and his face turned pale. "I know I was wrong," he said. "Emily?" He took a step closer and tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled away. "Just give me one more chance, please. Let's start over." "Start over?" I scoffed. "Ethan, did you forget how my father almost died because of you? Did you forget how you spent my birthday celebrating someone else's? Did you forget the smell of the sea on your clothes?" With every word I spoke, the color drained further from his face. By the end, he looked like a man completely hollowed out, standing there defeated. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "I'm so sorry. Your sorry comes too late, and it's worthless now." I looked him in the eye, speaking each word clearly. "Ethan, I will never give you the chance to hurt me again. Never." Then I turned and walked back behind the bar, ignoring him completely. He stood at the door for a long, long time. He didn't leave until the rain had stopped, walking away like a lost soul. Watching his lonely figure disappear down the street, I felt nothing but peace. Some wounds stop hurting once the scab has been ripped away. Some people, once missed, are missed forever. I thought Ethan wouldn't come back again. But to my surprise, he showed up the next day. This time, he didn't try to talk to me. He just sat down on a bench across the street from the cafe. From the moment I opened until I closed, he sat there silently, as still as a statue. The third day. The fourth. It was the same. Even the regular customers started to notice him and whispered to me, "Who is that guy?" I just said, "Someone who doesn't matter." A week later, as I was closing up for the night, I saw him still sitting there. The street lamp stretched his shadow long and thin, making him look lonely and small. I walked over. "What do you want, Ethan?" He looked up. His eyes were bloodshot. "I don't want anything," he rasped. "I just wanted to be close to you." For a second, I found it almost laughable. "Ethan, this pitiful act, who are you doing it for?" "I don't want pity," he shook his head. "And I'm not doing it for you. I can't help it. Every time I close my eyes, all I see is you walking away." "There are traces of you all over the house," Ethan said. "I don't dare go back. This is the only place I can come. When I see you, I feel like I'm still alive." As he spoke, his eyes slowly reddened. A man nearing 40 stood in front of me like a lost child, vulnerable and helpless. In the past, I would have been overwhelmed with sympathy. But now, all I felt was how absurd it all was. "That's your problem. It has nothing to do with me," I said coldly. "If you keep this up, I'll call the police." He lowered his head. His shoulders trembled slightly. "Emily," he said softly, then pulled a small box from his pocket and held it out to me. "This is for you." I opened it. Inside was a key. "It's the key to our old home," he explained. "I've transferred the house into your name, and the remaining shares I had in the company, I've signed them over to you as well. I know it won't make up for everything, but Before he could finish, I threw the key back at him. It landed in his arms with a sharp clang. "I don't need it." The key fell to the floor, the sound crisp and final. "Ethan," I said firmly, "everything I have now, I earned on my own. I don't need your charity or your guilt." I looked him in the eye, my voice unwavering. My life has nothing to do with you anymore. Please stop showing up and disturbing it." Then I turned and walked away, never once looking back. Behind me, I thought I heard the sound of him trying to muffle a sob, but so what? If he had known it would come to this, why had he done all of that in the first place? Back at what used to be our home, Ethan finally felt what true emptiness was. Emily hadn't left behind much, but what she took with her was all the warmth that ever existed in that space. He was used to the soft light glowing in the entryway when he got home. He was used to the warm meals waiting on the table. He was used to the woman who had always waited for him. Now, all of it was gone. Frustrated, he loosened his tie and dialed Xiao Xiao. "Come over," he said. She came. But she was no longer the obedient, sweet intern she used to be around him. She strutted around the apartment like she owned the place, cocky and overbearing. She glanced at the small decorations Emily had left behind with disdain. "Ugh, all this tacky crap. Just throw it out, it's such an eyesore," she said, picking up a cartoon cat mug from the table and walking toward the trash can. "Don't touch that," Ethan shouted almost reflexively. It was Emily's favorite mug. She'd used it for years, and the paint had even started to fade. Startled, Su Xiaoxiao pouted. "Why are you yelling? It's just a stupid cup. Ethan, are you really over her or not? If you're still hung up on her, then we're done." He used to think her spoiled attitude was cute, but now it grated on his nerves. He stared at that mug, and for the first time, he felt a strange, unfamiliar surge of anger. Not toward Emily, but toward anyone who dared treat something that belonged to her with disrespect. He said nothing. Su Xiaoxiao, not getting the response she wanted, stormed out and slammed the door. Ethan didn't chase after her this time. In the empty living room, regret loomed over him like a monster, devouring him whole and tormenting him without mercy. And instead of feeling relieved after Su Xiaoxiao left, Ethan felt himself sink even deeper into the abyss of memory. Drenched in guilt and sorrow, he wandered through the apartment like a ghost. He opened the medicine cabinet he had never once paid attention to. Inside, everything was labeled with tiny handwritten notes, organized neatly by type, usage instructions, dosage, and warnings. All written in Emily's delicate handwriting. He opened the closet. His shirts and trousers were still hanging in order, color-coded from light to dark. His ties were all neatly arranged on a dedicated rack. Only now did it dawn on him, the lifestyle he had always taken pride in, the image of being a meticulous, successful man. Every meticulously organized detail in that house had been built by Emily, her time, her care, her quiet devotion, and Ethan had destroyed it with his own hands. Now, he frantically searched for any trace of her existence. In the deepest corner of the study drawer, he found an inconspicuous tin box. Inside were the movie ticket stubs from their very first date, a faded discount flyer from a cheap noodle shop near their college, and a candid photo of him shooting a basketball on campus. On the back of the photo, written in neat handwriting, were 3 small words, "My light." Longing surged from the depths of his heart like a tide, twisting into 1,000 thorny vines that tore him apart from the inside out. He collapsed onto the floor, haunted by the memory of the day they divorced, replaying every moment over and over like self-inflicted torture. "Emily," he murmured, "what did you feel the moment you walked away from me?" No one answered. Meanwhile, the crisis at his company escalated rapidly. One blow after another. With Emily, who had once kept everything steady, gone, and his own judgment clouded by guilt and agitation, he made mistake after mistake. One major client after another pulled out. The company's cash flow was on the verge of collapse. Overwhelmed and desperate, Ethan became fixated on one idea. The beginning of the end had started with that seafood dinner. Yes, he had rejected the seafood his mother made, yet taken Su Xiaoxiao to a fancy seafood restaurant by the sea. That, he now believed, had been the fatal wound. A twisted thought took root in his mind. What if I ate it? He wondered. What if I ate the very thing she once used to protect me from? What if I showed her that I'd risk my life for her? Would she turn around, even for a second? Grasping at what he saw as his final chance, he drove like a madman to the seaside French restaurant Shiyu, where everything had unraveled. He sat by the window and ordered a tableful of seafood. Lobster, oysters, scallops, all the dishes Emily's mother had once cooked that day. The waiter kindly reminded him, "Sir, This is far too much for one person. Ethan's eyes were bloodshot. His voice was hoarse. Bring it all. He picked up a piece of white fish with trembling hands and put it into his mouth. The fishy taste he had hated all his life spread across his tongue, and his throat immediately burned and itched like fire. But he didn't care. He kept eating, as if completing some sacred ritual. Emily, look, he cried, tears streaming down his face as a strange, eerie smile tugged at his lips. I'm eating it. I'm eating it for you. In the blink of an eye, rashes spread from his neck across his entire face. His breathing grew labored and shallow. Just before he completely blacked out, he used the last of his strength to dial for an ambulance. Ethan's father called me. On the phone, his voice was frail and filled with weariness. Emily, I know I shouldn't bother you, but Ethan, he's in critical condition. My heart skipped a beat. What happened? He ate a lot of seafood for you, slipped and fell afterward. He's still in the ICU. The doctors say it doesn't look good. He was calling your name before he passed out. Could you come see him? I was silent. To be honest, I didn't want to go. Ethan and I had long since become strangers, but the old man's pleading on the other end wore down my resistance. At the very least, during our marriage, his parents had treated me kindly. So in the end, I went to the hospital. Ethan lay on the hospital bed, his face as pale as paper. He had lost so much weight that I barely recognized him. I stood at his bedside, staring at him, feeling nothing but calm, like I was looking at a stranger who had nothing to do with me. His father stood nearby, wiping away tears. It's our fault, his mother and I, we spoiled him too much. Emily, we owe you so much. I shook my head. It's all in the past. I stayed in the room for 10 minutes before preparing to leave. Just as I turned around, I noticed Ethan's fingers twitch slightly. Slowly his eyes opened, and his hazy gaze fell on me. Emily, he whispered, his voice barely audible. I paused. Tears streamed from the corners of his eyes. You came. I just came to see how you're doing, I said. He forced a smile that looked worse than a cry. I thought I'd never see you again. You won't, I replied, looking into his eyes. This is the last time. The smile on his face froze. The light in his eyes dimmed little by little. I'm sorry, he whispered again and again. I'm really, really sorry. I didn't answer. I walked out of the hospital room and never looked back. The sunlight outside the hospital door was blinding, stinging my eyes with its sharp brilliance. I took a deep breath. The air smelled like freedom. The story between Ethan and me truly ended there. Extra chapter. Ethan's point of view. I used to believe that Emily was the most stable, unchanging presence in my life, my constant backdrop. She was quiet, gentle, always in the background, never demanding. So I recklessly chased after all the dazzling neon lights ahead of me, thinking she would always be there. Su Xiao was the brightest of those lights. Young, bold, like a ball of fire that easily reignited the last flickers of passion left inside me after years of a dull marriage. I indulged in her unfiltered admiration, the vanity of spending extravagantly on her, watching her play like a child on the beach while I felt myself growing young again. When Emily noticed the faint scent of the sea on me, I only felt annoyed. Why was she always so sensitive? Why couldn't she just trust me unconditionally like she used to? So I built a wall of lies and impatience, thinking I could keep both worlds separated. I naively believed that as long as I didn't admit anything, the fortress I'd built would remain unshaken. I forgot her birthday but celebrated Su Xiao's instead, because Su Xiao would cry, pout, demand attention. Her joy felt like a prize I had to earn, which gave me a sense of purpose, a sense of being needed. Emily's love was too quiet. So quiet, it felt like air, always there, easy to take for granted. Until she threw the divorce papers in my face. Even as I signed them, I thought to myself, give her a few days. She'll come back, crying, begging me to take her back. After all, she loved me so much. She couldn't live without me. But I was wrong. I forgot that she was someone who could walk away when she was done. She could quit a job that made her unhappy. She could throw out expensive fruit if it had gone bad. And I was the spoiled, rotten part of her life. So she threw me away. She really left and took every ounce of warmth with her. When Su Xiao moved in, she brought nothing but endless fights and demands. She would scream at me for keeping a cup Emily had once used. She'd slam doors when I couldn't fulfill her material wants quickly enough. Only then did I realize I had driven away the ocean and tried to replace it with a shallow well. When the news broke that the company had gone bankrupt, Su Xiaoxiao disappeared faster than anyone. All those so-called brothers who used to drink and laugh with me, none of them answered my calls. I was left alone, betrayed by everyone, guarding a hollow grave of a home. I went mad. I became obsessed with the idea that everything had started with that seafood dinner. I had given the thing Emily hated most to another woman, something she once protected me from with all her heart. And in doing so, I had delivered my most fatal betrayal. I had to prove something. That I was willing to endure the very pain she had spent years shielding me from, even die from it, if that's what it took. So I went back to that seafood restaurant by the sea. I ordered every dish, lobster, oysters, scallops, everything Emily's mother had made that day. And I ate. Every bite felt like swallowing fire. My throat burned, my skin erupted in hives, but I kept going. It became my ritual of repentance. Emily, look, I wept, smiling through the agony. I ate it. I ate it for you. I didn't die. But I fell hard, and the fall shattered what was left of my life. Now I lie here in this hospital bed, paralyzed, bankrupt, homeless, just a broken man, mocked by the world that once envied me. I'm a cautionary tale, a punchline, and still she came. She was still beautiful, serene like a still autumn lake. I didn't deserve to be reflected in her eyes anymore. Like a drowning man grabbing his last lifeline, I rasped, I ate the seafood. I nearly died for you. She just looked at me, her expression flat, emotionless. Ethan, that means nothing. That means nothing. Those 3 words cut deeper than a death sentence. Turns out all my suffering, all this self-inflicted tragedy I thought would move her, was just a pathetic sideshow in a story that had already ended. She walked away. And this time, I wasn't even worthy of following behind her. Now I lie in this cold, sterile bed, day after day, staring at the ceiling. Memory after memory crashes over me like waves, drowning me again and again. I should have known then, that moment was everything I would ever need. And I was the one who lost her.